Oh, hey there! I didn't see you guys come in. Please join me.
Hey everyone, it's Nick. Welcome to the channel. Today, we're going to take a look at some basic wheel throwing techniques. How to center, drill, open, and pull. You even get some bonus wheel throwing ASMR. Enjoy.
I'm Nick with NIXart Studio, and I'm here at the Pottery. The Pottery, a new local community pottery studio located at the Playground. The Playground is an awesome art place, lots of paint your own pottery and pottery classes, along with all kinds of hand building classes. It's been open for a couple years in Shreveport, Louisiana. This is the studio I work at where I teach pottery classes.
Alright, here we go. Let's take a quick look at a few things you might need. First up, a little obvious, but you might need some clay. I got some here wedged up and rolled into a ball. Here's my sponge. I also have a wooden rib tool and a wooden trim tool that looks like a popsicle stick carved into a shank. And a few other rib tools that may come in handy. Here's a rubber one, a metal one, and a wood one used for shaping. And this needle tool may come in handy. I'm going to start by getting the wheel head just a little wet, slightly moist, and then I'm going to toss my clay down. You don't need to squish it, you don't need to throw it hard, just enough that it kind of grips on a little bit. I give it a couple whacks to make sure it's on there real good. The more uniformed and closer to the middle you have your clay on this first step here, the easier it'll be to actually center your clay. Centering, as the name implies, is literally just trying to get your clay right in the center of your wheel. I add a little water to my hand and to the clay to keep things going nice and smooth. Starting with my left hand, I imagine a straight line running from my elbow through my thumb that goes over the center of the clay. I put the heel of my palm on the clay at approximately about 6 or 7 o'clock, and I'll gently apply pressure, pushing the clay in the direction of the center. You'll want to go pretty fast on this part. For the wheel I'm on, that means I'm cranking this puppy up to full speed. Make sure to keep it moist. You'll see that even with just one hand, it's doing a lot to center it. If I continue doing pressure just from the side with that one hand, it will center it more, but the clay will keep getting taller and taller. My thumb can try to keep pushing it down, but I don't want to make that little guy do all the work. So next, let's look at how we can better recompress that clay back down and help center it a little bit more. Karate chop! With my right hand, I'm going to straighten it out and use the side in kind of like a karate chop position, going right across the center of the clay. I'm going to tilt my hand at a slight angle so that my fingers are pointing upwards, just a little bit. Let's take a look at that from a different view. That angled hand will help you keep more of a rounded dome shape instead of a flat puck shape. Just a little bit. Now let's combine those two hand positions. Keep it wet. And remember, for this part, we're going fast. You should be able to feel how the slight changes in your hand's position or pressure manipulate the clay. As you do more pressure from above and less pressure on the side, your piece should get wider and flatter, and vice versa. More pressure on the side and easing up on pressure above should allow your piece to grow taller and narrower. I like the size and shape of my centered piece of clay to mimic that of my final thrown piece. Taller and narrower for cups, wider and flatter for bowls. Let's take a quick look at another technique that may help you center. Coning. To cone the clay, I'm going to squeeze it together gently between my cupped hands, applying pressure with my left palm much like we did in the previous step, while my right hand applies pressure directly opposite of that. Moving your hands up with the clay, nice and easy. The clay will form a little traffic cone shape, hence the name, coning. It's just a cone. This will also help re-wedge the clay on the wheel and can redistribute moisture throughout it. You can push it back down using that original hand position. Once you think you have it nice and centered, you can test it by resting and stabilizing your hand on the pan of your wheel and putting a finger up to it so it just barely touches. Next up, it's time to drill. I like to use either both of my thumbs or one finger. I find these to be very beginner-friendly ways to drill. You may also use a tool. It's not my favorite, you can't feel the clay as well. If you need help finding the very center of your clay, run a finger across it like that. It'll make a little spiral that ends in the middle. Keep it wet. I'll be using my thumbs. Put them both in the very center and slowly and gently start pushing down. I like to add a little bit of extra water once you get that little divot formed. It will help keep the clay nice and lubricated as you push down further. Oh, and I haven't mentioned it yet, but anytime you remove your hands from the clay, let up pressure and ease off nice and slow. If you jerk them away too fast, you can throw your clay off center. You can measure how far down you've gone while drilling by using a needle tool. Poke it through the bottom of your clay until you touch the wheel head. The distance from the tip of your finger to the tip of the tool is how thick your bottom is. After we drill, we're left with this tiny little opening right there. Next step is to open that up wider. I use a technique I call the eagle claw. Using my right hand at 6 o'clock on the wheel head, I put a finger on the inside and my thumb on the outside. I hook that inside finger back towards me like an eagle's talon. My left hand acts as a support system for my right hand to help keep it steady. I apply a little bit of a pinching pressure. Keeping that same pinching pressure, I slide my hands closer to my body. Once I've widened and opened up that bottom a little bit, I'm gonna straighten out my finger and thumbs like that, and then I just slowly lift my hands off the clay without adding any additional pressure. Notice as I lift and compress that clay upwards, I'm going towards the center of the wheel to get that volcano shape. This will help give you a really nice flat bottom on the inside of your piece and give us a little bit of a wall to begin with. Alright, so now we got this little cylinder volcano guy. It's really short and its walls are thick. To make the overall piece taller and the walls much thinner, we are going to pull it up. I recommend working in the bottom right quadrant of the wheel. That would be between 3 and 6 o'clock. Oh, clay booger. Get out of there. Where was I? Between 3 and 6 o'clock. To pull this up, we're going to use pressure on the inside and pressure on the outside. Try to keep your hands touching as much as you can so that they work together as one. Left hand on the inside, right hand on the outside, hands touching. Then I'm going to pinch my fingers together to create pressure. Trying to keep that same even pressure, I'm going to slowly move them upwards. I recommend pulling slightly inwards towards the center just a little bit to help fight the natural tendency of the clay to go outwards. The position of your fingers can make a difference too. Fingers that are level will keep your walls straight. If you have one finger lower than the other, that finger will point in the direction the clay will go. If your inside finger is lower, it'll push your walls outward. And if your outside finger is lower, it'll push your walls inward. When pulling on the wheel, try to take it nice and slow. If you go too fast, you're going to get spirals in your clay and you're going to pull up unevenly. Try to give the wheel at least 2 full rotations everywhere your finger is touching. As your pull reaches the top of your piece, try to follow through as though there was a little bit more clay than there really is. This will help avoid getting a thick or bulbous rim that your pulls could catch on every time you hit it, stretching out the clay below and weakening it. I usually aim for getting 3 pulls on my piece. though that might vary for you depending on how much pressure you're putting on, how much clay you have, and how comfortable you are working with a thinner wall. Remember, everybody works and progresses at their own rate. I typically pull with my fingertips, but there's many different ways to pull, and almost every potter does it slightly different. Some people like to use the side of their fingers, or a knuckle, but if you have pressure on the inside, and pressure on the outside, and keep even pressure with your hands moving up at the same rate, you should be fine. Find a technique that works for you. Especially when you're a beginner, at some point while you're throwing, you have to decide that you're ready to move on. You can always keep working to get those walls thinner and taller, but you risk losing your piece. But don't worry, even if that does happen, you at least gain some valuable experience and practice on the wheel. Well, it looks like I'm ready to move on to the next step. Oh, I almost forgot. I'm going to sponge out any of that extra water sitting on the inside. Clay is water soluble after all. I don't want it to completely eat out my bottom. Let's take a quick look, and I promise it's going to be quick, like double speed. Quick look at those same pulls, but from two different angles, so you can kind of see the clay moving better. So fast. I like to use a rib tool to help clean up the walls. I'm using a wooden one, but any of them will work. This will get rid of all that extra slip on the outside, which will help strengthen your piece. It'll help it dry faster, gets rid of things like throwing ridges, gets it nice and smooth. It even straightens those walls out, and it helps thin it out a little bit too. And some potters do it after every pull. Let's tidy up that bottom a little bit. Using the popsicle knife-like wood trimming tool, I'm going to chop off that little skirt of clay that flares out on the bottom where it attaches to the wheel head. That's just extra clay that's gonna weigh our piece down. Get it out of here. Holding it like a pencil, I brace it on my left hand and I line the slanted edge up parallel with the wall and slowly cut in downwards. So smooth. I like to give both the outside and inside walls one final go over with a metal rib tool. Check again for any water down there. We don't want a soggy bottom. One last thing I like to do, if this is going to be a functional piece for drinking, is to just roll the rim back a little bit. It makes it really comfortable on the lips. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and pop this one out. I'm going to get another one in, and you can watch me throw one in real time. And, lucky for you, with a lot less talking. I'll mostly just add some notes on the screen so you can enjoy some ASMR. Oh, and I absolutely love having this little removable back system, by the way. It's fantastic. Centering. Coating. Slippery sponge. Okay, I'm already over the whispering thing. I'll still keep the talking pretty minimal. For now. After centering and coning it a few times, I'm ready to move on and drill. This time I'll use a finger technique instead of my thumbs. I transition nice and smoothly from drilling to opening with that eagle claw to starting that first little pull for the wall. Once you have those walls starting to form, don't forget to slow it down a little bit. Speed's gonna become your enemy. As you move upwards with your poles, try to go nice and smooth, keep it kinda slow. Try to keep your hands going up at the same rate. Try to follow through a little bit when you get to the top of that rim. Try to get 2 or 3 poles. If you're struggling with the wheel, remember, everybody learns and progresses at their own rate, and learns in their own ways. And this can be a pretty tricky thing to get the hang of. It's a series of several kinda complicated steps, and it might take you a lot of practice before you get it down. But just keep working at it. It takes time, but you can do it. Well, I'm Nick, and I hope you had fun watching me on the wheel today. Hopefully you learned a little something, picked up some tips and tricks about some basic wheel techniques. We looked at centering, coning, drilling, opening, and poling. If you have any questions or want me to do a deeper dive in any of those, let me know. And if you have any skills or techniques you'd like me to explore in future videos, drop it in the comments. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time.
Well, thanks for joining me today. I hope you guys had some fun looking at some basic wheel techniques.